Thanks for staying with us. Now, one of the major responsibilities all companies should fulfill is to ensure their employees are trained well enough to do their job. Employees who don't feel like they've had the proper training are the quickest to disengage and look for something new. Every employee should feel confident in their ability to do what's been asked of them, and it's the company's responsibility to set them up for success. The other major responsibility every company should fulfill is to treat their employees with kindness and respect. Treat them so well that they never want to leave. Employees who feel this way are fiercely loyal, become brand ambassadors, refer friends, and save you the time and money that you would have used to spend to hire a replacement. Now, train people, treat them well, happiness and productivity will definitely follow. So we're asking a question: what do you think the role of HR role of HR is in fostering a healthy workplace? That's the conversation for tonight. Now, please let us hear what you have to say. Remember, you can join the conversation. Send us an SMS or WhatsApp to 081-803-8663. You can also tweet at us at WaysShowAfrica1 with the hashtag WaysShow. All right, so Omolola, before I bring in our guest in like a minute or two, I'd like to just, hear your thoughts on the role of HR. Remember last week, or was it last week or whatever, some weeks ago, there was so many drama on Twitter. But, I like to think solutions. So instead of just bickering and talking and complaining, why don't we see things from a holistic point of view? By the way, this is my conversation. What I just read now is very one-sided because we did not say the role of the employee. We were just talking employer, but it's fine. But what do you think? What are your thoughts on, how you think HR can help in fostering a very healthy workplace?
Okay. So I'm going to come, when I first saw this topic today, I was like, And I say, because I haven't really had the best experience with HR. And not in the sense that, it was a terrible experience. It's more of in line of silence. Or that's what I felt. Or I always had the feeling like HR in most companies are not really accessible. You feel like you can't reach out to them because you're like, these guys are working for the company. So whose side are they really on? So if I were to give my opinion on HR, I mean, I'm sure they are doing their jobs. I'm sure there's a lot that is happening in that space. But from my own personal experience, I've not had the best experience with HR. I've not had any experience with HR. I've never had a need to go to HR because, I never felt safe with HR, so to speak. So that's my direction on this conversation. I'm open to,
Yeah, well, that's why we have the experts.
That's why we are here.
Well, I'm not here to even answer that question. But it's interesting you say that whose side are they really on?
Whose side
really,
are they
because
really on?
It just occurred to me that they have a tough job.
Let me bring in
our guest, because even me, I don't have answer to that question. Olutoyin Williams-Edem is a senior human resource management professional with over 14 years of experience in human resource management. She has extensive expertise in human resource strategy, people and organizational development, people management, leadership, culture, and capability development. Now, she is the founder and the lead consultant at the People Impact Company, a prime human resource consulting firm dedicated to improving talent management practices for small and medium enterprises with a core focus on SME CEO leadership capacity development. Now, Olutoyin is a BDSP, a life and career coach, and a member of the John Maxwell team certified to coach, train, and speak. She's also a Googly Launchpad mentor, that's in Lagos, a consultant and a senior mentor with FCMB. She Ventures program. Now, she is an alumni of the Faith Foundation AEP program, an alumna of the Microsoft Accelerate Lab, and a mentee of Cherry Blair Foundation. She is recognized. She is a recognized volunteer, mentor, and counselor with the Knowledge Exchange Center. Are we not honored to have her with us? And she's joined us live in studio. Thank you so much. She has such an amiable personality, by the way. Let me add that, even though it was not there. Thank you so much for joining us, Toyin.
Good evening, Uwa. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, we're excited. It's been a long call. We've been trying to get you.
It has. And I apologize. My schedule
it's
has
fine,
been
it's
nothing
fine.
short of crazy.
I said your job is not easy. You know, when Omolola just said this thing, it just hit me. You know, it has not hit me before. Like, really, where should they belong, you know? So I mean, this conversation, of course, it came off of the back of, but I don't like to dwell on negativity.
Sure.
I try to think solution, right?
Sure.
If everybody has clarity and you have knowledge of what should be done, it's easier to manage expectations and manage when you see situations, you'll be able to find some balance to be able to deal with those situations.
Absolutely.
I mean, everybody knows what trended on Twitter. We don't need to mention it, but you know, it just brought to light that a lot of people are actually in a very toxic work environment, right? And I just felt like I think the HR department of every company, whether small, medium, large, or whatever it is, has a very vital role in, you know, understanding the need of the person they are employing and relating that need to the employer and understanding the employer's expectation and yes, it has to be balanced, and relating that expectation to the employee, right? So how easy is your job?
My job is extremely exciting for me. I love people. I love people. I genuinely love people. I want people to grow and develop. So for me, it's what I love to do. If I wasn't being paid, I'll do it. But please, guys, do pay me. If I wasn't paid, I'll do it. But now I think let's take it from what exactly is the role of human resources. And I'm just going to give us a bit of a background, because I think it's really important that we set the right foundation. Now, different organizations, depending on where they are in their phase of growth, would require different things from human resources. Organizations generally have maybe 4 phases of growth. So you have, when you're in startup phase, you're in growth phase, you're mature, and then you go into decline, or you relaunch. Now, for those 4 phases of organizational growth, you have different requirements of the HR unit. You need them to just hire and fire. And then it's also dependent on the size of the organization. If you have a very small business, it doesn't even make sense for them to hire a full-time HR person. So that kind of business will look at finding a third-party consultant who can come in and help them on a need basis. Now, another factor to consider is, how is the organization set up? Is the organization set up as a sole proprietor, where you have only one person, aka one-man business? Or is the organization set up as a proper corporation, where you have people on board, you have people directing the business, and it's just not one person's decision as to how things are run? You see those 3 different factors: the phase of the organization in their growth,
the size of the
organization, and the way the organization sets up, demands different requirements from human resources. And if you're an HR practitioner in any of those organizations at those different times, you're going to have a different set of things to address. So now let's go back to that general question around, what's HR's part in fostering a healthy workplace? To be quite honest, it's not easy. You're balancing the needs of both the employee and the employer. How do you maintain that balance, knowing that there are organizational objectives to be met?
Keep that neutrality.
Keep that neutrality, and then we're here to make money. This is not a non-profit. And of course, there should be some things guiding us. So there are competencies that HR people should have. And one of those competencies that affects the topic at hand is being a cultural steward. What's a cultural steward? A cultural steward is someone who helps employees to navigate the culture. So you're helping the organization and the employee to navigate the culture of the organization. But then, question is,
do the organizations even have that culture?
Well, you're ahead of me on this one. Do they have that culture? They should. Because, you know, it's like when someone says, oh, what's your vision and your mission? It's as basic as you deciding. And what is culture? Culture is the shared values, combined persona. So, for example, I'm an amiable person, if I do say so myself. Yeah. And that's who I am. Now, the question is, when it comes to an organization, what is the organization, or who is the organization? How do they behave? What are the things they hold in common? All of that forms the culture. But then what is HR's position in helping the organization form the culture? First, HR needs to help them to understand. So, for example, your organization, whatever organization it is, what are your values? What do you value? Some people will say, oh, well, excellence, integrity, and all of that. But then the question is, do we conduct ourselves in a way that reflects our values? Are we people of integrity? Do we do work excellently? When we're delayed by the customer, do we tell them, don't worry, we're on our way, when we haven't even left? So all of those things tie into, first off, being able to clearly define what is the organization's value, then how do we live it? And HR's part in helping the organization live that culture. But like you rightly said, you have to balance it. It's a balancing act. But just being an HR person who understands what your role is in the organization where you work, because you might work for a startup, and of course in a startup environment it's like, you know, guys, let's go now.
Yeah.
But then in a mature environment you have now more structured,
just making sure that the process and the system
and things
is
are working.
running. Yeah.
Now if you're an HR person who is not able to understand the organization you work for, what they need from you, then you find a situation where Omolola described that I don't need HR. I haven't
don't even want to relate with them at all.
I haven't interfaced with HR before, but it shouldn't be like that. I felt really bad when you were saying that. It shouldn't be like that, because HR is such a key pillar of having a good organization, being able to run things easily.
Oh my God. I have a lot of questions. Let me leave Omolola to ask a question first.
All right, so I hear you. And
thank you for hearing me.
So from everything you said, I think one major question that is really key in my head is, I don't know how HR works, but I'm thinking, is there like a moral code, a moral compass that tells you, for instance, I mean, the Twitter situation we had the other time, and you know, this is the owner of the business, or these are the top guns in the business, and is there somewhere, is that, you know, HR sees these things, you know, I mean, it shouldn't be like this, but they're your bosses. So is there a point, which was why I'm still reiterating what I had said earlier, which is, which side are you on? Are you on the side of the, because I know ultimately when you're on the side of the employee, it ultimately serves the employer, because a happy employee is a happy business. Yeah. But then again, there are some employers that, you know, cross that line. So how do you then balance it? You personally now, you're an HR personnel, you know that, okay, this is wrong, but, you know, have you ever found yourself in a tight spot where you can't decide, can you make a stand, or do you just, you know, turn the other eye, because, I mean, they're the top guys? Okay,
that's a fantastic question, Omolola, and I'll answer it from two perspectives. So first off, from an organizational perspective, in order to avoid situations like that from happening and escalating, you need to have a corporate governance procedure. You need to have policies. What does the organization, how do we describe ourselves? How do we solve issues? Because it goes without saying that when you have people working together, you would have people have differing viewpoints. How do you manage it when there are differences? How do you kind of structure even an argument? How do you help people to navigate those emotions at work? If you don't have your policies, it will be anything goes. So you need to have your policies. And so somehow the first thing you probably need to find out is, do we have policies that guide how we treat people? Because definitely people will come in, there is an expected level of performance, people are not performing. How do we address underperformance? Do we attack people personally, or do we focus on the underperformance? How do we help them to navigate their own learning? If they are struggling with their role, how do you put them in roles where they can play to their strengths?
Absolutely.
Or how do you outplace them, if you need to outplace them outside of the organization, so they can continue their career outside of your organization? So you need to have those policies in place. Then you need to have a way of escalating things. So for example, like I said, how is the organization set up? Is it set up as a one-man business where only one person and what they want goes? If there is an alternative viewpoint, how do they adapt to it? And that's why one of the things that I am especially very excited about is, how do you help owners of businesses? How do you help CEOs? How do you help MDs navigate leadership? Because leadership isn't something you're born with. Leadership is something you develop.
Yeah, of course.
But if you don't have the right exposure, you might not even know that obviously some things are wrong. It's wrong for you to use offensive language on people regardless of their performance. It's wrong for you to do some things. You know, some things are just in the valley of wrong. But within the value of what is right, how do you know what to do so that you can continue to lead the organization? So it's extremely important that as people who lead organizations, we get exposed to the right learning to help them understand how to lead teams. Just because you're technically sound doesn't mean that you would do well managing a team of people.
Absolutely not.
You could have been, really great at what you do, and because of that you got promoted, but that doesn't mean that you now automatically have people management responsibilities. You simply may not be able to navigate it. But what we find is that people get promoted because of their competence, their technical competence, and no one's looking after them if they have
their
people
managerial skills.
Exactly. And that's something HR can do to help foster a healthier working environment, so that when you're moving people up the ladder, you're supporting them with the right people management capability, so that when they get up there, they know how to manage people.
With it. Oh,
because they will have to deal with people.
Absolutely. You know what, let's go on a very short break. When we come back from the break, we'll continue the conversation. Stay with us, we'll be right back. Now, if you just tuned in, we are having a magazine chat with Olutoyin Williams-Edem. Oh Lord, on the role of HR in fostering a healthy work environment. Now, please let us hear what you have to say. Remember, you can join the conversation. Send us an SMS or WhatsApp to 081-803-84663. You can also tweet to us at PlusTvAfrica1 with the hashtag WayShow. So, Bola, you are Olutoyin. You are when I was just listening to you, I was just smiling in my head. I say, come, because it's like you're the opposite of what I have as HR in my head. Like, I believe HR people, like, they're supposed to be very mean, very this, because when I hear stories about HR, almost it's very horrific.
Tell me about
it's very horrific. But you are someone that's really amiable. You are warm. You are everything, and yet you're able to navigate that role perfectly, excellently well. And again, I'll take a cue based on what you said. It depends on what the policy that is on ground. So I can be smiling with you. I say, oh, you're fired. I don't have to be mean. I don't have to be right. I can still smile like a Olutoyin and I tell you that you lost your job.
You just lost your job.
But I was going to say that what's the role of character play, right? The person. What role does character play in? Because when you said you had genuine love for people, I can feel that love, right? And I believe that, HR is supposed to be like the mother hen in the company, where everybody, you would when it's time to reprimand, you reprimand. When it's time to to show love, you would show love, and all of that. So how do we manage that? Because it's so critical, and I think not even most companies, even the HR personnel themselves, do not even understand the power that they wield in the organizational success. So how do we start to correct that gap, right? How do we get it? I see you racing around.
No, because your question is hydra-headed.
I'm telling you, it is.
Your question is hydra-headed. So are we right now discussing what sort of competencies a good HR person should have? Are we discussing HR's understanding of their power?
It's everything.
It's everything, but then we'll have to take it from one
somewhere,
angle.
Yeah.
First off, HR profession, like every other profession, like you meet some doctors and they have a terrible bedside manner. As in, they'll just say, madam, you have cancer. You're going to die.
Wow.
And they're not even trying to, sort of help you navigate how you're feeling. So, to be honest, I'm not perfect. I have my moments, and people who meet me in my moments will be like, oh my gosh, she's a dragon. But then, over and beyond that, try to be human about being dragony. And that's because you have to understand, there is a hard part of the job that people would naturally shy away from. So, for example, some people, they are very averse to confrontation, averse to, talking about an issue. What you have to do is you need to help with the appropriate learning. No one's born being able to, just solve problems, and you're just solving problems like you're Superman. No one's like that. They cultivate it, but they can only cultivate it if they have a level of awareness where you have a gap. Unfortunately, the thing with level of awareness is that many people are very unaware. They are unaware of the things they are doing very poorly. And in fact, when you bring it up to them, they'll be like, you know what, that's how I am. That's how I am. That's my personality. No. that's bad behavior. That's bad behavior. That's something that needs to be corrected. But to Omolola's point, it can get really tough holding senior management accountable. Because when you look at it in the grand scheme of an organization, HR is a unit. Yes, they have so much power and influence, but they are still not the last decision makers. So how then do you learn to use your influence in the organization? And trust me, we all have influence in the organization, regardless of our level in the organization.
Sure.
How do you leverage your influence for good? Because eventually, if you have to have a situation where there's a senior person who's misbehaved, and you need to have that hard conversation, how do you have it? Do you, as an HR person, do you have the competence? Does the organization foster such an environment where we can have these hard conversations?
Sure.
And that's where we need to get to. So back to my earlier point, it's in the setup. Have you got the policies? Are you driving those policies? Are you implementing them? When there is an incident, how do you kick in corporate governance so that things don't escalate? Things don't escalate and get out of hand and someone is being abused or is being abusive. How do you checkmate? And there are always 3-4 sides to a story. So you have to. And then, you know, it's very easy to get carried away, but you have to come back to basics to say, what exactly has happened here? Has our policies been trying? What exactly are we dealing with here? And how do you attend to those things quite unemotionally? Because you have to be able to be objective in discussing what the challenges are. But there is a part to play, and everyone has a part to play in that. So line managers, supervisors, employees themselves, how do you address that is communal effort? How do you address grievances in a very constructive way? Because to be quite honest, a lot of people have a huge gap in emotional intelligence. So for example, if I'm giving you feedback on your work, some people get extremely defensive. And you're wondering, see, I'm just talking about the work. I know that there are some people who be like, oh, I'm not talking about the work now, I'm talking about you. But in this instance, it's about the work. And I'm saying this piece of work is substandard. I'm not saying you're substandard.
No, but Olutoyin, is it not, don't they work hand in hand? Sometimes your personality plays out on your job, right? So are you not allowed to still talk about the person, you know?
Now, in talking about the person...
Or in the workplace is a no-no?
No. So in talking about the person, and this is where your sensitivities have to kick in, your professionalism has to kick in. If there is work to be done, I want to assume in favor of the organization that there are KPIs that have been determined ahead of time. So you have a job, you have a role, the role has a job description. The job description has a KPI. The KPI hopefully is aligned to organizational strategy, but that's a separate topic entirely. Now, when you are reviewing the person's performance, you're reviewing their performance against their KPIs. You're not reviewing Omolola as Omolola.
It's based on her KPI.
You are reviewing Omolola based on her job description, based on her KPIs. Omolola, you have something to say.
I have something to say.
Please say it so you can rest.
So for me, I know that, you know, professionalism needs to come in.
Okay.
But let's not dispute the fact that in the work environment, there's a lot of people take things personal.
Personal things play out. I mean, personal whatever plays out.
There's this, I have a very healthy relationship with my team lead. And whenever we have any squabble, we always just tell each other, it's not personal. Like, you always just know this is not personal, it's just the work. But with some people, it is personal. So my question now is, in the case that an HR personnel maybe, I mean, when it becomes personal, then it's a bit hard to be objective, because you don't know if this person is being mean to you, if they are attacking you. You know, sometimes you feel that way, like, is this person attacking me, because you feel some kind of energy coming from this person.
Absolutely.
So this brings me to my question, which is, who sanctions HR?
Who sanctions HR? Your policies. So for example, even if an HR, your policy supersedes everybody and everything. It's your policy. If your policy, so for example, within the HR team, something is going wrong, the policies would have to kick in. Obviously, the person who will now apply it will be someone else other than the HR person, because the HR person is in the mix of it.
So if I have a problem with an HR personnel, for instance, who do I report to?
You would more likely, so the way organizations should be set up is that you have your own line manager. The HR person is definitely, maybe not, because again, it goes back to the setup. Is it a one-man business where you have the HR as the most senior person? Is the HR the wife of the MD? Those are instances as well. So it goes back to the setup. It goes back to the setup of the organization. But as much as possible, there should be differentiation. So, for example, you have your line manager. You escalate to your line manager that, oh, this is the issue you have with HR. They are not responding to you. And your line manager, who should obviously maybe be at the same level of seniority as the HR person, would be able to pick it up on a pair-to-pair to say, what's going on with you? We're having this challenge. You're not responding to us. When that fails, then you can escalate to the MD. But of course, you know, we can sit here and paint 1,001 different mishaps that are happening within the organization. So let's bring it back, Omolola. Well, let's bring it back.
Yes,
we're bringing it back.
Let's bring it back. Let's bring it back to basics. And the basics is that, one, you need to be aware of the organization you are working in.
I was coming there.
You need to be aware.
I was coming there.
You need to be aware.
The biggest challenge that I think that we've had with these issues of HR, you don't see these things in multinationals. You don't see, it might play out, but it is not as bad. Again, don't forget that what all this conversation, where it sparked from was startups. You know, one-man business. So maybe we should bring it back home.
Yeah.
How do we foster a healthy work relationship
in a startup?
Where you know that, yes, so this
that's
one...
a dissertation right there.
Are we planning to see the book?
That's the dissertation right there.
Project? We'll come and support when you're defending the project. You know, it's a lot of work. But because, I mean, you hit the nail on the head when you said that the three things you should look out: the phase, the size, and the setup, right?
Yep.
That phase, when they're at that startup stage, you know, where it seems like I am the financial controller,
everything. I am the everything.
How do you foster? Because you have to start from somewhere.
Well, you don't ask the easy questions. If you had told me,
this was what
I would have brought my professors. But I mean, see, that's a really difficult conversation to have, and a difficult question to answer, because if you look at the way the startup ecosystem in Nigeria is, there is money in the ecosystem. People can raise funds. So you have a fantastic idea, you can raise funds, and maybe we can pioneer something. And some of the things that I think about in my quiet time is, if you have a VC funding a startup or a PE firm funding a startup, one of the things that we should actively begin to look at, I mean, in the wake of all of that Twitter war and all the Twitter incidences, is what is the level of the founder's leadership capability? Yes, you have a fantastic idea. You're planning to sell water in a glass. You've identified the market. We have the funding. We punched all the numbers. We punched all the numbers, and this is a good business to go. But then forget that people are the heart of the business. And then, who are you? Have you got the right experience? And if you look at the average age of startup entrepreneurs, they're probably in their early 30s. There's a lot of boom towards that. They're in their early 30s. They haven't done enough of structured work to understand how organizations run sustainably. So yes, that you have a business idea, you have funding for it, doesn't mean you automatically have a sustainable business. There is still the ability to bring in the right structures, to have the right experience to guide you. And that's why, and I dare say I'm just pioneering this, that maybe one of the prerequisites should be that you should have worked for a bit. Or you should understand how the organization functions.
Or they can come to your firm.
Yes. I mean, again, because again, you have to look at what is feasible to implement. Or they can say, you know what, a portion of these funds has to go into you getting business development support, consultants to help you. Because I mean, if you're 30 or 20 something years, how much work experience you have? Maybe you even started your business straight out of school, out of NYSC. So you don't know what it is to run a business.
Yeah.
But then what I hear some VC firms do, and what they do is that they would get you a coach to work with you.
So that's where I was going. That so can we start to demand that some of these startups?
Well, this is me looking at you like, who is demanding? Are you the one demanding? Who is going to make the demand?
I was just thinking, because just imagine. So I might not have the experience,
sure.
I might not have the expertise, I might not have, but if we begin to place that tiny demand that as part of understanding and building a successful business.
Absolutely.
Why don't we, partner with
some VC firms actually put it as part of the conditions for
because if you lose that, say if I invest money in you and all your workers they run away, you're going to lose the money. So you lose anyway.
You lose anyway. There is a very strong business case for, looking at the age and the experience, because these are very complex factors. But look at the age, the experience, the past work experience of the person in corporate, because it's not just enough to say I have an idea. It is how do you build that. Then again, maybe you can look at the constitution of the team. So you have maybe the CTO who is a young guy, you have the you have the ideas guy who is also a young guy. How do you bring on board other people who have experience running organizations? They've seen how it should be. So you're bringing in an experience.
So you don't necessarily have to have that experience. You can just bring.
Absolutely.
That's why people must get to that point where they consult. Absolutely. All right, so let's take some comments, Omolola. We have a long one there.
All right, so quite long. Good evening, my dear beautiful sisters of What Are You Saying? #Ways. Considering the role of human resource manager, it is very easy, but people misunderstand it because they lack knowledge and understanding of it. When you have a good HRM, that is human resource manager, that understands and has the idea and sense of an establishment, that business will progress and blossom. People should not see HR the wrong way. A good HRM adds spice to any company and establishment. God bless you, my dear beautiful sister Olutoyin. Thumbs up to you. Also, a good HRM is not harsh, but has a vision and goal towards building an establishment. My name is Daniel Ilo, Ways regular fan.
Thank you, Daniel. So we have I'm happy that Ade is finally watching us again. He lives in the UK, so YouTube is working. So good evening, ladies. Please don't put fear on Omolola. Our amiable guest is well loaded with more to offer. Yes, we have to bring her back. But time is not friendly, like you already know. But do have a great weekend. Thank you so much. Yes, so you Olutoyin, you have to promise our audience that you're going to become a regular. The eye is dancing. Because you just make things so easy. I like to talk to people that make life easy for me. Like so you understand the issues, and you brought solutions in the simplest form, right? So if we want to find in a way to wrap up the conversation, if you had something like a counsel for startups, especially because that's where the biggest challenges are when it comes to healthy workplace, what would you just give as a counsel as we wrap up the conversation?
I would say that if you're a startup founder, you have a fantastic idea, kudos to you. You've raised money, kudos to you as well. Please surround yourself with people who have the experience to help your organization thrive. So beyond getting the money, put together a team that have succeeded in doing this in their own separate organizations, and then bring them on board and allow them to do the work. Please, may I allow that for the people at the back? Allow them to do the work. Yeah, because again, it can be quite frustrating when you get a really senior person and you don't allow them to do the work. That can be quite frustrating. But allow them to do the work. Let them help you put the structures in place, and you would find a much, much, much sustainable organization. And that would decrease, all of this.
Just one last thing. So how
Lola, this would be the like can you please
one more. So it's just cost. Because some of these startups, they feel like it's going to be expensive to get a Olutoyin to come consult for me for my.
Sis, I ain't cheap. I do not intend to be cheap.
So they need to understand that it's
experience. No, so if you think about it, and this is that question all of the time, which is that, do you want to spend money hiring someone who already has the experience? It comes down to it, even for a salesperson. So think about it. Regular business, you need a customer service person. You're like, oh no, let's just get this girl out of secondary school. We'll tell her what to do. And then a customer comes and says, you know what? I'm going to kill you people on the streets of Twitter. And this guy says, madam, do your worst. there goes your inexperience playing out. So rather, you should try and invest money in getting people who have tons of experience dealing with irate customers, so that when the person says, I'm dragging you on the street, I say, madam, please don't do that. You know what, we'll throw in a 10% for you. How about I help you with this? And that's what you need, because you have the idea, but you can't be everywhere.
Absolutely.
You need to empower people, hire the right people, empower them, and let them get to work.
On that note, Olutoyin will be back. But thank you so much. I had a fantastic conversation. It's a good way to wrap my weekend. Thank you so much, Olutoyin.
I had a good time as well. Thank you for having me. And thanks for being patient. I know you had to chase me.
Oh, I know.
I apologize.
See, it was worth the wait. Thank you, Amola. We had a fantastic conversation. Now, before we go, do ensure you follow us on Instagram at PlusTvAfrica. You can interact with us further, drop a comment, and more importantly, follow all our engagements on social media. Like, share, and invite your families and friends to watch and follow the conversation. Now, if you missed today's quote, here it is again. Train people well enough so they can leave. Treat them well enough so they don't want to leave. This was actually by Richard Branson. We'll see you guys live on Monday as we bring another great conversation to your screen. Enjoy.